So welcome back to day 3 of Worlds of Flavor, Roots of Culture, Seas of Discovery, Mediterranean Culinary Tradition, Exchange, and Invention in the 21st Century. Today, we're going to have a great general session here to cooking demos, and then we'll go to our last set of breakout sessions, and then we'll come back here for our final session of the day. So much to see and to taste and to experience. So grateful that you're all back and that I think, we'll give ourselves a couple of moments to sort of get into the mood of things, and then and mostly I'm just talking this way so that I also will start to get really pumped up so that we can just really engage with this day. Thank you to Jody Eddy and Fabrizio Lanza for the inspiration for our CIA culinary staff to create breakfast. I hope you enjoyed that. And then we're not going to have any time for Q&A with this session. It's going to be pretty quick. But now I'm going to go to our session. It's my honor to introduce Chandra Ram, a writer, recipe developer, culinary consultant, and an alum of the CIA. And she's also an alum of Worlds of Flavor. It's great to bring her back. She's an award-winning writer, editor, cookbook author, and culinary trend spotter. She publishes Another Bite with Chandra Ram on Substack after spending 20 years working in media as the food director of Food and Wine, the editor-in-chief of Plate, RIP, and writing for publications including Epicurious, Food 52, and Gravy. She's been featured in the New York Times, Good Morning America, and the Chicago Tribune, and was nominated for James Beard and IACP awards. She's won awards including IACP Member of the Year, the McAllister Editorial Fellowship, several Jesse H. Neal Awards and Folio Awards, and an Association of Food Journalists Awards. And she's here, also another Chicagoan, a great, great Chicagoan. And so she is here to introduce our next session. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much for that introduction. I'm like, I wish my mom was here to be like, oh, yes. Thank you all so much for joining us today, and thank you to the CIA and all of the chefs and event planners and directors and all of the students who've been helping out throughout this entire week. It's just been amazing to we know that we see a couple of things happening, and then behind the scenes, there's like 50 people making sure everything is perfect. And it's one of the reasons why I'm just so thrilled to be back here at Worlds of Flavors, or WOOF, as I learned to call it today. So today we're here to talk about when flavors travel a bit. And something I always think about, when I was growing up, when I was a kid growing up in Kentucky, I think our family stood out a little bit. My father was Indian. My mother is Irish. They met in London and then got married, moved to the U.S., and wound up settling in Kentucky. And my parents had a big garden in the backyard of our house. And they, grew tomatoes and cucumbers and squash and everything. And my father planted okra because he's from South India. And that was something that was like one of his favorite vegetables. So he always grew okra. And one day, one of our neighbors said, "Oh, I think it's so great that y'all are embracing a Southern ingredient like okra." My dad's looking at her like, "Okra's not an American thing; it's an Indian thing." And of course, okra actually comes to all of us from Africa. But the idea that an ingredient can belong only to one place is a question I think we in food and in culture debate over and over again. And as someone of Indian heritage who grew up in the South, I might make a pork vindaloo, and I might pull that pork and maybe toss it with a little bit more of that tangy sauce. And I might put it on a slider bun and top it with a slaw. And then, is it an Indian dish? Because it kind of vibes like Carolina barbecue. But it's something that could be one, could be both, could be just as Ed Lee said yesterday in his presentation when he was asked about whether his carbonara with tofu and kimchi, whether you would call that Korean or Italian, he would call it American, because this is where we really combine flavors. But it gets me thinking about the fact that there are so many ingredients and so many culinary traditions that travel. And sometimes it's because of, of just vegetables growing in like-minded climates all around the world. Sometimes it's because of things like war and colonialism and slavery. And sometimes it's because just one group of people moving to another place and saying, hey, we're still going to do our food and we're going to do it with local ingredients. But what I like to think about is, even as we acknowledge that not all of the reasons for this are necessarily happy, what I like to think about is the fact that when we do work like this, and happily when we're doing it in kitchens and in dining rooms and in books and with our people, we get to find the joy in it. What we're doing is creating a conversation between two different cultures and between their ingredients and the people, but also just those cultures as a whole and finding that kind of commonality. And so today we're going to, as we continue our look at Mediterranean cuisines, we're going to look at two different foods from two different countries that aren't necessarily, as Greg mentioned yesterday in his presentation, that whose history is far older than any political boundaries. And so doesn't necessarily need to be claimed as strictly one thing or another, but can actually be in conversation and be part of a larger conversation that we're having here, that we're all taking home to our own kitchens and our own work, but as well that we can do as something that we're enjoying. So we've got two fantastic chefs here to cook and talk about the food that they're making and what kind of conversations those are starting. So first off, I want to introduce my good friend, Murad Lalou. He is, of course, the star chef and owner of Murad and Aziza restaurants in San Francisco. He has opened additional restaurants in Hawaii to kind of continue that conversation as well. And he's here today to make a breakfast for us and talk about what all of these ingredients mean. So please join me in welcoming Murad Lalou.
Am I starting now, or Jordan's starting? Okay. So, really well said, Chandra, about the conversation that is taking place between cultures and food and, this imaginary boundaries that we create as human beings. And lately, I've been thinking a lot about it. I started thinking about it when I started writing my book, and I was digging deeper into the meaning of each dish that I was putting in that book, and I wanted to give a story and a background. And I realized that I was making food for so many years that I didn't even understand. I just made it because I watched my mom make it. I made it because it was Moroccan. And I got away with a lot of shit when I was making it. I didn't have a story. I didn't have the roots of the dish. But after doing it for so many years, I realized that I needed to go back and basically figure out why people were making the food that they were making in Morocco the way they were making it. One of the most interesting stories that I figured out and came across was, are you guys familiar with Bessia? So it's this beautiful Moroccan dish. It epitomizes Moroccan food. It's a chicken pot pie, or if you want to call it that, wrapped in filo dough, baked, and has a lot of butter, almonds, dried fruits, a lot of warm spices. And on the outside, we dusted with a lot of sugar. And I've always wondered why was that, and why was it called pasilla? Little did I know, in Spanish, pasilla means a pill. And the pill, if you look at any like medicinal pill, it's sweet on the outside because you can eat it and it doesn't feel abrasive. But if you really cut into it, it's bitter sometimes. Most of the time it's bitter. So that's the idea, and that's where the name came from. And I don't know still to this day where the Bastille originated. But the moral of the story is like every dish, where it comes from, has a story. And I think we need to be aware of that. However, having said that, and I just want to follow up with what Chandra said, sometimes we go overboard with the boundaries. It's fantastic if we just look at the world as us living on this planet, and there's no imaginary borders, and this is Algerian, this is Turkish, this is Spanish. It just fucking drives me crazy sometimes. However, food has to have a sense of place. That is really important. I don't want to eat Chinese, I don't want to eat Chinese food in Marrakesh. I don't want to eat sushi in Marrakesh. It just doesn't feel right, even if it's made with the best ingredients, even if it's made by the best chefs, it just doesn't feel right. And if you go to Marrakesh to the night market and you buy a stupid sandwich with potatoes and eggs and cream cheese and harissa and cumin, and you take a bite out of that, it will taste so much better than if you were to make it here with the best ingredients, by the best chefs. It just doesn't work. My best friend, Chris Costa, who is a 3 Michelin star chef, when he got married, he took his wife at the time to Marrakesh for their honeymoon. And he asked me, where should I eat? And I told him about this stall in the night market. And I said, go to number 47. The guy's name is Hassan, and ask him for a potato sandwich. And he goes, you're fucking out of your mind. If you think I'm going to take my wife all the way to Marrakesh and buy a sandwich for 50 cents, and I'm going to consider that to be a culinary experience, you're crazy. So he went to the fancy places. He went to La Mamounia, Royal Mansour, all those high-end places. He paid a lot of money. And then one night when he was at the night market, he saw number 47, and he decided to give it a try. He literally called me from the place after he took his first bite. He goes, this is amazing. And it just took him to a place that he never was before. But yeah, so the boundaries are so frustrating to me sometimes. But I do believe, I'm going to make shakshuka today. And yesterday, I was here just by accident, and I saw Ed Lee making shakshuka in his Korean style, Korean way. It was really interesting, but it just got me to think, as much as I hate boundaries, as much as I hate the idea of separation, and just because if you think about North Africa and Southern Europe, we're separated by a body of water, the Mediterranean, but it's not that big. If that were a lake in the middle of America, we would not separate the two parts where that lake is. But because of politics, because of geography, because of whatever it is, we tend to separate the things. So what's Moroccan is Moroccan, what's Spanish is Spanish, although we share so much, we're so close together. You can see Spain from Morocco on a clear day. It's literally like 20 minutes away. But there is a clear separation of cultures, of ideologies, of perspectives, and of food. And I do see a lot of things that travel back and forth because of the geographic nature of Morocco and Spain and Southern Europe and North Africa. So today, I'm going to make you a shakshuka, which is a very, very traditional dish in the Maghreb, which is North Africa. You can find it in Algeria, Tunisia. I've seen it in Turkey. I've seen it in Spain. And to be honest with you, I've seen it on every single menu in America. It just seems that the last couple of years, everybody wanted to make shakshuka and its cousin. So it's a very traditional way, and I'm going to show you. When I came to America first, I was making traditional food, and this is what I'm going to show you at the beginning. But eventually, because of this boundary thing, or because of this ingredient thing, it's like I was not allowed to use certain ingredients when I started cooking because they were not Moroccan. So you were pigeonholed in this little box, and basically you cannot use arugula, you cannot use purslane, you cannot use raw fish, you cannot use soy sauce. Forget about miso. Like, that is not something that a Moroccan chef should touch. But if you think about it, an American chef who's using Asian ingredients or European ingredients or Southern American ingredients, they're visionaries because they're expanding their repertoire. They're looking everywhere. They're, improvising. However, okay, can you hear me? Are we good? Okay. However, if you have an Indian chef trying to use ingredients from other cultures or other cuisines, they're selling out. And that's not cool. That just creates a little bit of a separation between what is allowed and what is not allowed. So it makes me happy to see shakshuka and to see couscous and to see, Moroccan dishes on so many American menus. And forget about France. I mean, France, there's couscous and shakshuka everywhere. It's just like not even looked at as Moroccan anymore. But it makes me happy to see that. But I do feel like at times we need to keep some sort of integrity so that the certain dishes should be. I want to eat a coq au vin in France, I want to eat pasta in Italy. I want to eat dim sum in China. But I don't want to eat it in Marrakesh. I had sushi in Marrakesh. I was invited to a dinner, and they took me to a sushi place. It was awful. It was hot. Like, it was so hot. The fish was great. The technique was perfect, but it just didn't feel right. And that's what I'm talking about. I think we need to be conscious of letting food have a sense of place and have integrity, but at the same time experiment. And as Chandra said, when people travel and they bring their heritage with them, it's important that we let it simmer for a long period of time and not just be forcing, dishes and foods onto other cultures and societies. So I'm going to stop talking and just make the food. So to make the shakshuka is really a simple process. The shakshuka is very peasant. You eat it like in villages, and I think some of the best food in Morocco is not fine dining at all. Some of the best food is made by peasants, people who are poor, people who don't have a lot of money. And as you know, like especially when I was growing up in Morocco, the country was not very affluent. So people did not have a lot of money. And the idea of having a steak per person or a big piece of meat or a side of a fish per person does not exist. So when you look at people in Morocco while they're eating out of a tagine like this that is like probably 3 or 4 times the size, and it's one platter in the middle of the plate, and people eat from that. So first of all, it's a communal thing. It's really beautiful to have everybody be nourished from the same vessel. And it's also a really clever idea of having like maybe half a pound of meat cooked in a tagine for a very long time, so it's simmered. We don't. If you go to a butcher and you ask for lamb chops, they're pretty much the cheapest things on the counter. Here in America or in the West, in Europe, lamb chops are really well priced. Like that's the cut that everybody wants because they cook faster. Okay, let's start. She wants me to start. Okay, so we're gonna take oil. It goes into a pan. This is good if it's done in a tagine, but we're going to do a double step here. Then goes onions, garlic. And I'm going to do this, and it's going to look exactly like what Ed Lee did yesterday, if you guys were here. And then we're going to wait for this a little bit to cook off. But to expedite it, we'll put the crushed tomatoes. And now we're going to go in with the spices. Paprika. Cayenne. Cumin. Salt. And a little bit of the white pepper. So we'll let this simmer a little bit, and basically you're creating like a sort of sofrito. And it will reduce quite a bit, and it will cook off the onions and the garlic. Then I'm going to add carrot juice. Typically in Morocco, we don't tend to use carrot juice at all in dishes. But after eating it for so many times, I just realized that it needed a little bit of sweetness, but I don't want to use sugar or honey or something that is really, forward. The carrots have a tremendous amount of sweetness, and they balance the tomatoes really well. These are chopped red bell peppers. You can use piquillo peppers if you want. You just char them over an open fire, sweat them and peel them, seed them, chop them up. This will cook up for a little bit. These are chickpeas that have been soaked overnight, obviously, and simmered a little bit so that they soften. I'm going to add them up. Rebecca is the brain behind the operation. I will do this last. With the shakshuka, I'm going to use kefta. So kefta is our Moroccan burger. Basically, it's ground beef or ground lamb with a lot of fat. And it has the same spices that go into the shakshuka. It has cayenne, cumin, garlic, onions, herbs, parsley, and cilantro. Sometimes we do a little bit of basil and thyme and a bunch of herbs. It has an egg to bind the meat together, and you just roll it with your hands into little balls like this. Okay, so this is with the the magic of television, I guess. This is what the stew would look like eventually. At this point, I will just add all the meatballs. And if you notice, like in Moroccan cooking, we don't tend to brown a lot of meat. So if you saw any videos on YouTube of Moroccan chefs making food, it's usually just like raw meat going into a pot with spices and water. There's no stocks. We just use water, onions, garlic, and the idea is to extract as much flavor as possible from the protein because it's so little to go into the sauce, and people will eat the sauce with the bread. And it's very impolite in Morocco to dig right into the middle of the dish and get the meat. So you have to eat the sauce with the bread to fill up a little bit. So by the time you get to the meat, you don't need much. Now you're already full. So we just let this simmer for a little bit. Can we have the heat on? We just let it simmer to cook maybe halfway. And once it cooks, I'm just going to like pop eggs in there. I'm going to use 3 eggs here. Is this starting to look a little bit familiar to the shakshuka as you guys have in most restaurants? And at this point, you just put the lid on, and you just let the steam. The idea behind tagine is not just to look cute, because it's really a cool dish, but the idea is the heat is coming from the bottom, and the steam is actually rolling all the way to the top, and it's being reverted down, so it's circulating. So if you think about it, this is probably the first circulator. If you think about people in modern days cooking with the circulator where they have constant heat and slow heat, this is an old version of it, and it was fascinating when I was writing my book to figure this out and find out how it works. So the steam from the bottom will go up, it will come back down again, and it will cook the poached eggs. We're just going to crank this up a little bit. Yeah.
I feel like so often I see so many different types of shakshuka on menus. Some that aren't very tomato forward at all. Green shakshukas. So many different variants. Are all of those ones that you would find in Morocco?
No.
No.
No. You only find either the paprika-based ones without tomatoes.
Okay.
And the most popular one is the tomato-based shakshuka. However, at Aziza, about 6 months ago, I tried to do a green shakshuka, where it was just herb-based, spinach, parsley, cilantro, and it was all green, no tomatoes, same spices. It was so delicious, but it was probably one of the most failed dishes I've ever made. Nobody embraced it.
Really?
100%.
I would eat that.
Yeah.
Right now.
But people just wanted this kind of shakshuka, which was, we just put it back. We gave people what they wanted. So at this point, We're gonna pretend that this is post. I'm gonna garnish it.
Just fix your hair. Keep talking.
The cool thing about shakshuka is once it's done, you can literally put on top of it whatever you want. And the idea is like to keep it from becoming, am I okay?
You're good.
To keep it from becoming like monotonous and you're eating the same bite, I tend to put a lot of garnish so that if you eat one bite from this side, you might get the pickled jalapenos. If you hit like a black garlic, you get a completely different taste, but it's kind of fun and it makes it interesting to mix it up a little bit. Olives, these are Castelvetrano olives that we stole from Italy. Preserved lemons. Pickled onions. It seems like a lot, but you can literally not do any of this, or you can do as much as you want. And it's really a good way to clean up your fridge. And just for some creaminess, because it doesn't have a lot of fat, this is a jalapeno cream. Some raw chard. This is kale. And again, the cool thing is like the herbs are raw, but once you finish doing all this, these are pickled long beans that we stole from the Chinese. Once you do this, you can just cover it for literally like 30 seconds to a minute, and it will just make everything really nice and great. So this is the traditional way of doing it. We serve it with flatbread, as you see here. The flatbread will be brushed with oil, just olive oil. And at the restaurant, we typically don't cut the bread. We just let people, we serve it like this, and we let people, they have to cut it themselves. And it's really weird for people to do that because they're touching each other's food, but that's where the idea of like breaking bread comes from, is you sit down together with people that you know or people you don't know, and you share a meal, and you have to touch each other's food, and you have to eat from the same vessel. So this is how we basically serve it, and people, when they get it, they literally just have to go like this. You get a piece that is big, that is small, it doesn't really matter, but basically, this is it. There we go. So that's it. But I had to do something. I have 5 seconds. Fuck.
You're good.
So I had to do something different because I lived in America a lot longer than I lived in Morocco. So I wanted to have some sort of integrity of what I do when I serve people food at the restaurant. So we've had Michelin stars, we've had like the accolades and all of that. But at the end of the day, I just wanted to make food that is honest to me. And I think that's the best way to achieve certain level of integrity when you have a restaurant. So this is a very modern way of looking at shakshuka. So it's exactly the same ingredients that went in here. Literally every single ingredient that we put into a tagine, I just took and I put into this puree. So this is like baby food where you take all of this, you blend it, you put stabilizers in it, and it becomes a puree. But this is how we serve it at the restaurant. So this is the shakshuka, basically. It goes at the bottom of a topped egg. So do we have the shells so I can show? Yeah. So it's an egg that you top, and you extract everything. You clean the membrane, obviously. Clean this really well, and it turns into this. And then these are eggs that have been cleaned up, and they've been cooked for 1 hour at 64 degrees Celsius. The texture, can I have like a white plate? or anything that I can show the texture. Thank you. So this is an egg yolk, and if you see, you can cut through it, and it's very jammy, but it's not cooked. It's not like a hard-boiled egg, which is really cool. So I'll take one of these egg yolks that's been cooked for an hour, just place it inside the egg yolk. There you go. And this is a potato foam. Sometimes with shakshuka, we have chunks of potatoes, and that's the one that I remember the most from Marrakesh. Can I have a little dish, any kind of dish? And so we took potatoes, we cooked them down with cream, milk, and stabilized them with a little bit of xanthan gum. Put it in a siphon and charged it, and basically here we go. And to be able to charge a lot of money for this at the restaurant, you just have to take the time and put a lot of garnishes and flowers on it. Obviously, if we had the time, I would make a lot of arrangements, but
Yeah,
I'm
and
just
Chef,
going to spit it out.
we do have to move along, so
Yes.
thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I love seeing the juxtaposition of the more rustic shakshuka with what you're plating right now, and excited to continue the conversation from the point of view of Southern Italy with our next presenter, Jordan Ezra King. Jordan is a recipe developer, a trained chef, and a storyteller. He's based in London and has come here to share his cuisine, his experiences from working in restaurants in France, Italy, and London, his experience with different cookbooks, and of course, through his newsletter, A Curious Cook. Please join me in welcoming Jordan Ezra King.
Hello, everybody. Can you all hear me okay? We're all good? Cool. Thank you for being here today. I'm going to cook a very simple dish for you, but I'm going to start with a few words about Mediterranean food. Apologies if you were here yesterday, it is my same opening, but I think it's important. I don't think that there's any such thing as Mediterranean cuisine. I think you have Mediterranean cuisines, plural, but 22 different countries with very different food cultures, very different histories, all sharing kind of one sea, essentially, rather than a unified, homogeneous Mediterranean cuisine or Mediterranean diet. Those are kind of quite new concepts. And actually, they're really new. The first time that anybody ever conceptualized the idea of a Mediterranean food, the first time that anyone took that geographical label and applied it to cuisine was only in 1950. So it's a very, very new idea. It was the English food writer Elizabeth David. She wrote a book called A Book of Mediterranean Food. And it was the first time ever, really ever, that anybody had ever conceptualized this idea of Mediterranean food. And I think that's pretty interesting because now it's such a buzzword. So we use that, anytime something's got olive oil, oregano, or tomatoes, you stick the word Mediterranean on it. And, there's kind of pros and cons to that. Shorthands are useful for getting to the point sometimes. But what you do have, although I don't think there is this unified Mediterranean cuisine, what you do have is, 3,000 years plus of cultural exchange between the countries that share this coastline, right? So travel and trade and migration have shaped all of the cuisines across the Mediterranean, and they've all exchanged ideas, shared ingredients and methods and techniques and dishes that have traveled. And I'm going to cook one of those for you today. It really is a simple dish. I'm going to start by making a little aromatic vinegar. And that's kind of the original linking point of this dish and where it comes from and kind of the clue to its origin. And the origin of this dish, which now is Neapolitan, right? It's called alla scapece. You find this in Naples, in southern Italy and Sicily, and it's a dish of fried vegetables, which are fried in olive oil, and they're dressed and left to marinate in an aromatic infused vinegar, which is what I'm making here. I've got a couple of different types of vinegar, just for their different flavor profiles. And I'm going to add some garlic, some sugar, and a little bit of lemon zest. And then we're just going to warm it through, kind of infuse it. And this is kind of the beginning of the sweet and sour flavor profile, that agrodolce kind of flavor that you find a lot in the south of Italy. And also a clue as to the origin of this dish, which goes all the way back to ancient Iran. And if you ever read old, like 10th century cookbooks, follow me on Goodreads, Kitab al-Tabikh, for example, you will find dishes like this, very similar to this. And this is a very old dish called al-sikbaj. And it's meat simmered in sweet and sour vinegar. And it was originally conceptualized as a kind of preservation method, right? And so they took the meat and they cooked it with pomegranate vinegar, lots of different kind of acidic elements, and then also sweetened it with honey and dates and things like that. And as far as I know, it's a dish that no longer exists in Iranian cuisine, but what we do have is perhaps even more interesting. The idea of the dish, the framework of the dish, the flavor profile of the dish is what I'm making today as I cook a Neapolitan dish. And the way that happened is fascinating. The Moors, the Moorish Arabs, they took this Iranian dish, or this flavor profile, more this framework, and they took it, and it came from Iran all the way up to the Eastern Mediterranean, to the Levantine countries. And they brought it all the way along North Africa to Spain. And Spain, if you go back 1,200 years, was under Arab rule, Al-Andalus, they called it. And this dish, this Iranian dish, al-sikbaj, traveled to Spain, and al-sikbaj became escabeche, which is a Spanish dish that a lot of you might know. It's typically kind of done with seafood, prepared in a vinegar sauce. And you can hear it in the name, and you can see it in the technique, and you can feel it in the flavor profile. It's that same kind of origin. And then later, in the 1600s, when the Spanish ruled over the Kingdom of Naples, so this is kind of long before the unification of Italy. Italy is only kind of 150 odd years old. So when it was all of these warring principalities and kingdoms and papal states and owned by different countries and cultures, the Spanish ruled over Naples. And they brought escabeche with them. And escabeche in Neapolitan dialect became al-escabeche. And the same cultures and flavors and traditions of a sweet and sour vinegar applied to a vegetable or a protein continued. So kind of 1,200 years later, and many thousands of miles away, we have that, the original kind of profile of this Iranian dish, having gone a very, very long way, and kind of kept, I suppose, in essence, its name as well, which I think is pretty cool. So I've got my vinegar just infusing here. I've got some olive oil heating up here, and I'm going to fry these pumpkin, but I've also got some already done here. These are delicata, and I like using these because you can keep the skin on, which I think is nice. So I'm just going to take the seeds out there, like that. And I'll just do a couple of these for you. And then we're going to fry them for 3 or 4 minutes, and then I'm going to dress them in that aromatic vinegar, which is infusing. And then kind of the really important part of this is to let it rest. Like most people, we're better after a little rest. So I'm going to leave it to, just kind of do its thing for at least 3 or 4 hours, but even better, overnight. I'm just going to cut them into kind of centimeter-sized pieces. And I'm doing this with pumpkin. So the dish in Naples would be called zucca alla scapeche, but it's very common to do it with zucchini, with eggplants, really with whatever's in season. And I like dishes like this, which kind of teach you a framework rather than something kind of super specific, because you can apply it to, whatever you've got. And it's nice, I don't work in restaurants anymore, but this is kind of a dream dish if you do, because it's made ahead, and because it's typically served at room temperature, and because it's made the day before and left to marinate. It's a really nice garnish for a piece of protein, for mozzarella, which is what I'm going to serve it with, which is what you find a lot in Naples. And we're just going to give it kind of 3 or 4 minutes here. I always cook in extra virgin olive oil. There are a lot of myths around why you can't, but I don't believe any of them. We've been doing it for thousands of years, long before refined vegetable oil. So I'll just cook this. And what I want is kind of a little bit of caramelization. I want some of the sugars in the pumpkin to just start to color around the edges. It'll take kind of usually 3-4 minutes, something like that. If any of you were at the marketplace yesterday, you might have tasted the little dishes that I made up of this. So this is good. This is ready. I'm not really cooking the vinegar as such. I'm just warming it up so that the garlic, the lemon, the sugar, the salt, they all mix together and infuse. I can just sit that there to cool down. While this is frying, I'll build the dish with the pumpkin that I've already fried. And it's really simple. You're going to take this, and you can do it in layers, or you can just put it all together in the same bowl and dress it and mix it up. I'm going to just pop it all in here, like that. And then I've got some mint, and I've got some chili. The chili is optional. The mint, I would say, is essential. And that kind of brings this, the whole dish is very fresh. You've got the vinegar, you've got the mint. It has a nice kind of cooling property to it. And again, if you trace that flavor profile back, that kind of makes sense. In Islamic dietetics, they kind of thought of vinegar as a cooling substance to the body and very healthy. And so it's quite nice. It's a nice thing to eat in summer. It's a nice thing to serve with something fatty, because it's going to really cut through. So if you have a piece of lamb, or if you have a fatty cheese like mozzarella, this is a really nice counterpart to that, because it's very fresh, very acidic. And you can see here what we're aiming for with the pumpkin, right? We're not trying to make like chips or crisps or anything like that. It's not going to be a crunchy texture. We just want them to be cooked through. We want a little bit of color on the edges. So I'm going to give these probably another minute. In the meantime, I can just take this vinegar here. I should actually hold back the garlic. Yeah, I can use a spoon. Oh, thank you. I'll take the garlic out. So we just want the flavor from the garlic. And then I'm going to pour all of this over my pumpkin. And it's great when you've fried a vegetable like this. It's kind of warm and ready to just soak up whatever you're going to pour over it. So we can pour this over the top, like that. And then my little demo pumpkin is ready as well. So that's kind of your end goal there, if you can see that. Nice little kind of crystallization, caramelization of the sugars on the corner of the pumpkin. And then you would just take this off, let it cool down a little bit, and pour over that infused vinegar. Very, very simple bit of cooking. But a really nice starter, garnish, aperitivo, however you like.
And would you want to add that vinegar in advance so it has time to really soak it up, or
Yeah,
is
for
it
sure.
a la
So
minute?
I would always leave this for at least 3 or 4 hours, but even better overnight, and then just serve it at room temperature the next day. So in my bowl here, I've got my infused vinegar, I've got my fried pumpkin. I'm going to take the mint and just tear it up. And it's really, it is a very simple bit of cooking, but it's kind of greater than the sum of its parts, I think. It rests and it kind of comes together and it kind of mixes, and you have the sweet pumpkin and you have the acidity from the vinegar and the freshness from the mint, a little bit of spice from the chili, if you add that. And it becomes kind of quite a harmonious dish. I'm going to tear through tear through some mint, like that.
I love the contrast that you're creating here with the mint and the vinegar and the cheese and the squash.
Yeah, it's lovely. It's got, richness, acidity, a little bit of heat. It's a very it's got a nice rounded flavor profile. The other thing that I've done with these, which is quite important, is these ones that I fried yesterday have been quite heavily salted. So you want them to have, you want them to be well seasoned. And then I can just mix this together, and you want to kind of dress it. And it's not quite a pickle, but it does have a real depth of acidity to it. You probably wouldn't eat, a whole bowl of it, but if you popped a little bit on some rice, if you serve it with a protein, some lamb, some grilled fish, or, as I'm about to do, some mozzarella. So this is kind of what you would make. And you would have this just like that and cover it and put it in the fridge overnight. And you can leave it for 2 days, 3 days. I mean, originally it was a preservation technique. So they would have made this and carried it with them. So it lasts for a while, and it definitely gets better as it sits. And then in terms of turning it into a dish, you can put it on the table like that, and people can help themselves, and it's a nice way to start a meal. It's very bright, it's very acidic, it kind of opens up your appetite. I'm just going to put some onto a plate here with a few little bits of mozzarella, so we're staying quite kind of typical to a Neapolitan way of serving it. Obviously, mozzarella kind of comes from Campania, the same region that this dish is found. So it's pretty typical to serve it with some mozzarella there. And the way that I do that is just layer it up. Nothing too stiff. You don't want to kind of, a balancing act. It should be quite natural on the plate, I think. And then I'll make a couple of little layers like this. And another layer of the pumpkin on top. And then I would maybe just finish that with, a little bit of olive oil. You could do another pinch of chili. You could do some more mint, whatever you like. I did a version of this which I finished with some pomegranate, which is not kind of traditional to the Italian dish, but it was a bit of a nod to its kind of ancient Iranian origin, and also a nice thing because pomegranate and pumpkin come into season at the same time. And it adds a really nice little pop of colour, and a kind of, a historic nod to the origins of the dish. I'll do a little bit of chili. And this one hasn't sat, so it won't have the depth of flavour that the true dish would have. But I can do that. I can do, very carefully, a little bit of olive oil over the top. And that would be your dish. It's very, very simple, but very nice. And I find it very exciting that, 1,200 years after that dish left Iran, and many thousands of miles later, we still cook this dish with, with that original flavor profile, some of those original flavors from a very long way away. And it's a bit like we were just talking about. I'm heavily skeptical of, the nationalism and the borders that surround food. I'm making this with pumpkin, which is native to South America. We made, this shakshuka with tomatoes and peppers, which are native to South America, but they're both Mediterranean dishes. So it's, there's too much movement, there's too much history, there's too much overlap in trade. There's too much humanity in food for it to be so delineated into borders like that.
And I think what you've shown us today and what Murad has shown us, this is the best way to continue exploring how those connections happen and the, as we said, the conversation between the cultures. So Jordan, Murad, thank you both so much for sharing your talents and your recipes.
Welcome to Peanuts in the Plant Forward Kitchen. I'm Ashton Pelham, and today we're diving into how school meals can help kids grow up healthy and happy with a little help from peanuts. Now, joining me today are two experts in school nutrition. We have Chef Aaron Smith, who's whipping up a delicious peanut-based recipe, and Angela Gomez, a registered dietitian who knows how to make school meals both nutritious and kid-approved. Now, Angela, balancing USDA guidelines with what kids will actually eat, that is no small feat at all. How do peanuts help you strike that balance?
Well, as you know, peanuts are a familiar favorite, especially in the form of peanut butter for a lot of our students. And we want to feed kids something that they're excited about, which peanuts are part of that. Peanuts are really versatile. They can be included in culturally relevant school meals, in globally inspired dishes, sauces, baked in breads. They can be in so many different things. On top of that, they're also nutritionally jam-packed. They have about 7 grams of protein per serving, which is more than any other nut. They also have healthy fats, fiber, and over 30 essential vitamins and minerals. So nutrient-packed.
Now, that's a great point. Peanuts really check a lot of boxes when it comes to nutrition, and clearly there's more to them than just PB&J. Now, Chef Aaron, walk us through what you're going to be cooking us today. It smells amazing in here.
Yeah, so today we're going to set up a peanut butter toast bar, right? It's a great way for kids to interact, a way for them to kind of build their own plate, as well as to touch on different global flavors as well. So today we're going to touch on 3 different types of peanut butter toast. We're going to do a spicy, we're going to do a fresh, and we're going to do a sweet one. So I'm going to start off with the sweet and spicy toast, which would include some orange marmalade, some sriracha, as well as cilantro.
Now, that sounds really delicious. Now, Angela, there are some schools out there, they're cautious about peanuts because of food allergies in particular. Is this as widespread as people think that it is?
Peanuts are one of the top 9 food allergens in the US, and all food allergies should be taken seriously. However, banning peanuts gives a false sense of security. So it's best in school cafeterias to plan and not ban. And the truth is, we're serving a lot of foods that could be potential allergens to some of our students. The way we manage those foods and keep those foods safe is the same thing we can do with peanuts. So training, proper food labeling, and proper food preparation.
It would be great to have peanuts back on the menu everywhere. I hate for kids to miss out on this great nutrition, and wow, how does that look? It looks so amazing.
Orange marmalade, some sriracha for a little bit of heat, and some cilantro.
Wow.
And then if you could help me out.
Yep. I'll grab this piece of toast right here. It's already got a spread on it.
So you can start with the banana split. Bananas, you have some chocolate chips and a little bit of caramel. And I'm gonna work on the one with the fresh berries.
Now this is pretty easy.
I'm just gonna supervise you all with that.
Now, Chef Aaron, how do you handle peanut allergies in your operation?
Well, we make sure we do a lot to make sure there's awareness about peanuts. The way we went about it, we first incorporated peanuts in high school level, middle school, and then created a lot of signage for the elementary students. And with our signage, we make sure that we have pictures of what a peanut is versus just relying on the word peanuts. Less than 1% of our students has a peanut allergy. So we want to make sure that those students are super aware that we have peanuts, but also give the students who love peanuts the opportunity to have it. For me personally, my daughter has a peanut allergy. So I make sure that she is super aware, ask the questions, know what it looks like. But her friend still eats it. They still have the trail mixes. They still have the other things. And she would check. She said, I see a peanut.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so Chef Aaron, this looks beautiful right here. I see we have the sweet, we have the split, and then we have the spicy.
The cool thing about this, right, you can have as much fruit as you want. And I understand the USDA rules about added sugars, but a little drizzle doesn't hurt of honey. And another cool thing that we could do with this concept, we can make this a peanut butter grab-and-go box for like grabbing on the classroom, field trips. All the things for the banana split, you can have a little thing of bananas, chocolate chips, and the students can build their own. So you have a lot of flexibility with this concept.
Chef Aaron, Angela, thank you both. We learned that peanuts are not only packed with nutrition, but when prepared safely and creatively, they can be a powerful part of school meals, both breakfast and lunch included. Now, thanks for watching Peanuts in the Plant Forward Kitchen. I'm Ashton Pelham. See you next time. And seriously, where was this food when I was in school?
Right?
Lemongrass tofu is intensely flavorful, packed with fragrant and citrusy lemongrass and crispy golden tofu. This plant-based dish, called da sa in Vietnamese, is delicious served with rice, rice noodles, or in fresh spring rolls. The first step to making this dish is marinating the tofu. In a bowl, toss minced lemongrass, soy sauce, chilies, turmeric, which gives the tofu its yellow color, palm sugar, rice wine vinegar, and lime zest. Pour this over the cubes of Nasoya Organic Superfirm tofu and allow the tofu to marinate for 30 minutes, tossing occasionally. After the tofu is marinated, we're ready to cook. Heat 2 tablespoons of oil in a large non-stick frying pan over medium heat. Arrange the marinated tofu in a single layer and cook. Turning occasionally with chopsticks or a fish spatula until browned and caramelized on all sides. Avoid overcrowding the pan when browning tofu to ensure even cooking. Top the lemongrass tofu with peanuts, cilantro, sliced chilies, and some freshly shaved lemongrass. Serve the tofu with a side of jasmine rice. You will love this dish's perfect balance of sweet, spicy, and savory flavors. Enjoy!
Chilled soups using summer ingredients can be found all over the European Union. France's vichyssoise, Bulgarian tarator, German kalte Gurkensuppe, and Portugal's gazpacho alentejano. Spain's southern region of Andalusia is known for its garlicky chilled version of tomato soups, gazpacho and salmorejo. They are light and refreshing on a hot summer's day. Here's my take on a chilled tomato soup. In place of traditional day-old bread, I'm adding salted crackers from Romania here. They've been soaked in water and will add body and a nutty, creamy texture as well as seasoning to the soup. I'm adding Croatian tomato sauce as the base, along with some Polish paprika and smoked salt from Germany. Red bell pepper and Espelette pepper vinegar from France adds mild heat with sweet, fruity, and acidic notes. I'm adding this olive oil from Greece that is garlic infused to add some extra garlicky flavor. I'm garnishing my chilled soup with some sliced Iberico chorizo from Spain, which has been fried in olive oil for a nice umami-rich crunch. This gazpacho is more than just a summer soup. It's a snapshot of European flavor and geography blended into one dish that's inspiring, accessible, and globally relevant. To resemble the traditional egg garnish, I'm also topping the soup with olives stuffed with Parmigiano Reggiano. This cow's milk cheese has protected designation of origin or PDO status, which guarantees it is made exclusively in Italy following strict traditional methods. I love the briny flavor of the olives paired with the sweet and savory soup. Give the soup one last drizzle of oil, though this time I'll be using pumpkin seed oil, also known as Steirisches Kürbisgrünöl from Austria. It adds a deep, rich green color and a burst of summer squash flavor. This pumpkin seed oil has PGI or Protected Geographical Indication label. This label certifies that at least one stage of the production, processing, or preparation of the product takes place in the region of its geographical origin. Lastly, I'm going to garnish with a touch more of the smoked sea salt from Germany. And serve! I love celebrating and updating traditional European recipes with my own favorite ingredients and influences, and I hope you'll love this reimagined classic European summer dish as much as I do. This chilled summer soup is so refreshing and really is what both chefs and home cooks alike are craving. Something light, bright, and flavorful using high-quality pantry staples.